Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello to you and welcome back to the channel where you join me today in a very snowy Austria. We're in Kitzbühel with Bentley for the launch of the Bentayga, now with the twin turbocharged V8. Today we're going to take a look around the car, talk about what's changed about the slightly lighter V8 powered version of the Bentayga. We'll take it out for a drive, see what it is like. So let's get started taking a quick look at the car. Naturally, our start location with the Bentayga right here is on the snow. I always think it looks awesome to have a car parked alongside logs. It makes for an amazing photo shoot location. So this version of the Bentayga, you're probably very familiar with the car. I've obviously filmed with them a number of times before, from taking the W12 across the dunes in Palm Springs to also taking one to IKEA not all that long ago when I was setting up my new place in Germany. The big difference here though is the engine. There are a number of visual cues from the exterior as to this car. It's got the black spec, but you have some sportier touches, for example around the lights, the black trim that you can see, the black parts all around the car, different wheels with the dual tone paintwork, a couple of things on the interior that are different about the car as well. For the V8, and for the first time Bentley introducing gloss carbon fibre trim that you can have throughout, which looks very nice. But the most important thing to do here is open up the engine bay and head round and have a quick look at this and talk about the main thing that we are here today to discover. So if we open that up, V8. So this is a 4 litre twin scroll twin turboed V8. It makes 550 PS, 770 Newton meters of torque. Of course, it's mated to the all-wheel drive system. It also has the 48 volt active anti-roll system, which is a brilliant system for a comfortable ride experience. It will do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.5 seconds, 4.4 for your 0 to 60 miles per hour. And the top speed is 180 miles an hour, 290 kilometers per hour. So interestingly, this engine is actually only about 25 kilos lighter than the larger W12, but one thing that's quite nice about it is that you get full torque, the full 770 Newton meters from just 2,000 RPM, so very much traditional Bentley driving experience. If I just close this back down again for a moment, the orange on this car looks brilliant against the snow that we have today. Very nice look. Obviously a big fan of that. So for example, around the front, the gloss black grille or grille parts that you see all around are part of the new sportier image. So Bentley have introduced the V8 to be a slightly sporty, slightly more youthful version of their car that mixes the ultimate in luxuriousness and comfort, for example, that you would find in a Mulsanne, with the sportiness and performance of a GT Speed. And I mean, you had a quick glimpse at the interior. We'll check it out in more detail later on, but it is very much the finest finishes and materials, the aluminium that's used, the metals, everything is just very, very nice. Anyway, let us jump in, get out of the snow for now, and get started on the road. It is not a surprise that the Bentayga has now got a V8. That's been the intention from the outset. But what is quite interesting is that since the first Bentayga launched and deliveries started in November 2015, so just over 2 years ago, they have now sold and delivered over 10,000 units, which is huge for Bentley. They massively increased their production numbers with this car. It was a big investment. They spent £800 million in the design, development, the factory, the facilities, and it's all built in Crewe in England. What is quite interesting though, obviously, is the ability and the way they use the parts available from the VW group. So there are things you notice that are shared. Of course, the platform is shared with the Q7, the Cayenne, the new Urus from Lamborghini. But this is very much an interior that is Bentley. The trim, finish, and fitment and just quality of materials is second to nothing. It's a lovely, lovely place to be. This particular car, though, I want to talk about a little bit about the price. So the Bentayga V8 starts at £136,000, which is £30,000 cheaper than the W12. Of course, by having the 4 litre V8, that helps with import into China in terms of the taxes. It doesn't make too much difference elsewhere based on that, although obviously it increases fuel economy and range and that side of things. And I noticed that we don't even have a full tank and we still have 600 and something kilometers to empty, so it's going to go a long way on a single tank. But this car, so 136,000 base, this particular car that I'm driving has a base price of £222,600. So more than 50% of the base price in options, which does mean it's a lovely spec, but it is very, very, very expensive. So you have to consider that a little bit. They might not necessarily have all of the options on a customer car that this has. But obviously it's a significant product for Bentley, like I said, in terms of the sales, in terms of what it means. Bentayga customers, more than 50% of them are new to the brand and didn't own a Bentley before. And I'm just driving along right now and just taking the quietness of it, the smoothness, the ride, just driving in normal Bentley mode. You have various different modes you can flip between. It is a lovely, lovely place to be, and we're going to be heading somewhere for a little bit more of a dynamic drive on the snow and ice later on, so we'll experience it in that setting. But we'll just take in some of the roads as we go and talk a little bit more about the car itself as well. Given a big part of this car is the extra sportiness that it offers, let us change it from Bentley mode into sport mode, so more dynamic settings. Let us go manual on the gear stick, which you do as so. We've got an 8-speed automatic gearbox, downshifted a little bit. You can hear the engine noise, but I'm not for a second going to pretend it's loud. It's a familiar kind of sound. The engine is developed in harmony with Porsche, with Audi, 4-litre, similar block. It's 550 horsepower, 770 Newton meters. It's a lot of torque. You get all of the torque, all 770 Newton meters, from the 2000 RPM. So you have instant go, whatever speed, whatever gear you're driving in, you put your foot down and the car is going to pull away. And you have this familiar V8 soundtrack. Now I particularly like the W12 because it crackles. Just the noise of the Bentayga in front of us accelerating away there. The crackles you get from the W12 are phenomenal, but I can see the perks of this, and you definitely don't feel like you're losing performance. If you're considering between the two cars, this is amply powerful enough. Nobody is going to be driving this car and thinking that doesn't have enough go or sound mature and grown up enough. Obviously, the slight reduction in weight is at the front end, so it changes the dynamic feel slightly, not a huge amount. We're not talking big numbers, but this is also the introduction of new carbon ceramic brakes, and this car has 440mm front discs, 370mm at the back, but those are the largest discs on a road car, certainly on any Bentley, and I believe on pretty much any production road car. It is crazy stopping power given the weight of the car. It's over 2 tons, 2.2, 2.3 tons. Don't go into the numbers precisely. You're not buying this thing to be a lightweight track weapon, even with the suspension system that is actually really quite good when you are driving it hard. We've actually crossed over into Germany and we're driving on an Autobahn, a de-restricted Autobahn. So if I just put my foot straight to the floor, let's see what happens. Gears go down and away you go. So this is the highest revving Bentley engine, up to 7,000 RPM. And we can only drive up to 230 kilometers an hour because of the winter tires, but the torque is consistent and continuous. It just keeps going, keeps pulling, and lets us pull away quite dramatically without much pitch. So when you slam your foot down, the front doesn't pitch up massively into the air. You just get moving very quickly. We find ourselves on a lovely twisty road, so let's drop down some gears and just see what this car is like dynamically to drive in this kind of environment. Of course, normally you'd be here in a sports car, but what you've got to remember is that this is a big, heavy SUV. This is not your typical car for this environment, but those shift noises are actually pretty decent. The way it gets a move on is brilliant, and the control of the ride with the dampers, the active anti-roll, is so good. Honestly, it's one of the best things about this car, the fact that they developed that. It makes this thing feel much smaller and lighter and more nimble than it actually is. And I mean, this is, well, cold conditions, we've got all-wheel drive, winter tyres. I have to say, out here doing this, it works very well. Having now returned back to Kitzbühel, where we started out earlier on, and we're about to be going for an experience with some ice driving over here, beyond that Bentayga that even has a ski rack on the roof, which is very cool, exactly what the cars are made for. We've made ours really rather dirty driving it, but if you haven't or aren't familiar with the W12, let's just take a quick whiz around and talk about some of the design and the Bentayga in general, the car that was introduced 2 years ago or so, and it is distinctly Bentley. You look at this, you recognise this car, the power lines that run down the lengths of the car, the haunches at the rear that are styled and very representative of the Continental GT. Obviously the platform more raised up, more versatile in terms of luggage space capacity around the rear, distinct Bentley tail lights, a little bit dirty right now, but with the B inside the light design. The anti-roll suspension system that we talked about, the large wheels that are on this car. It has all of the carbon fibre exterior components, so the flying B on the wings, the door mirrors, the skirts along the side, the splitter around the front as well, and of course the large open front grille for intake, cooling and airflow through the car. So features we're in general very familiar with. If I just come round and jump more into the inside, because I haven't really shown you that much of what goes on in here either. So I'll just take a step inside for the moment, bash off my feet, excuse me, which I guess gives us an opportunity to just see the name by Bentley sound system. Many speakers, 1,900 watts of audio. So let's just start up the car, which you do right in here on the mode selector. So it'll default into the Bentley mode. You also have sport and comfort, and the difference between the suspension is just crazy. You have the custom configuration. You also have snow and sand, mud, all-terrain or different types of terrain, forest, that kind of thing, and then sand for driving in the dunes, raise and lower the suspension system, hill descent control. Obviously your traction settings will play more with that. The stylish gear lever here. All of these components are very beautifully made as you look around. This could definitely be quicker. Navigation system, I said before, it's not necessarily like the latest generation versus some of the components. A few shared things with group stuff in general. So for example, those screens we've kind of seen before, but they're finished with much nicer exterior toggles, the metals that are used. And as I also mentioned, we have the new gloss carbon fiber trim around the car, which is lovely to see as well. Everything that you touch, soft close on the doors, is really nice. The leathers are lovely. All the quilting that you can see here, it's all made and designed by Bentley and crew. It's a really nice place to be. The dial's traditional, but now with a digital display in the center. So for example, you can scroll through, bring up the map, see exactly where we are right now. All of that works very neatly and nicely as you would expect it to. This stitching is quite interesting. This new cross stitch, it takes 30 working hours to make the cross stitching throughout this car, which is really quite something. But all in all, has to say, it is very nice up here. Let's just quickly step into the rear. It wouldn't be a great video if I didn't show you what it's like back here in terms of space. Ample room. You have these digital tablet screens, of course, more carbon fiber trim back here, and the nice air vent toggles as well. So all of that works pretty nicely. Even the seats, very supportive, nicely quilted just to match the seats in the front. Close that back up, come around to the boot. Power tailgate, nice and dirty. Back here, loads of room. Got the tracks, as you've seen in some of my previous videos, even went to IKEA and lugged a lot of luggage around in the boot of the Bentley Bentayga. I think though, enough talking about the car, let us prepare now for a session out on this ice driving course. Here we go, and first up we are using the snow and ice driving mode. So the car basically has the system that can compute this kind of terrain, which is seriously chopped up soft snow. If I put my foot down, it's doing the work for us. The magic is happening, even braking. It's actually quite amazing how easily you can get moving. And this is on road tyres, winter tyres of course, but pretty standard road tyres. You just have to be careful with what's going on here. We don't want to slide off or anything, but driving like this actually, I mean, decent pace. It just lets you drive. It lets you do your thing completely fine, which is lovely to experience. We've got a little jump almost here on the course, but get moving, get yourself stopped, no problem at all. You can hear the ABS doing its stuff as well, traction interfering, making sure that kind of nothing goes wrong. Drive around a corner at decent speed. There's actually no slip at all. It's like the car's doing everything. But let's pop it now into sport mode. So we go straight up into sport mode, and now there will be the ability to drive aggressively, drive sportily, and just drive, just get on with it, which is kind of absurd, especially if you're used to significantly lower cars, shall we say. But traction will be limited. The throttle is obviously held back. If, let's say, I stab my foot down, it's not going to let me get away with doing anything too ridiculous or too silly in this mode. What I notice here is how pretty much the car will just turn and let you drive, and this is with traction on. You have to give it an awful lot of power to unsettle it, and then the throttle is restricted. Just point around the corner, feel a little bit of slip in the rear end, and away you go. Super, super easy. But for the next run round, doing the little slalom, we will press ESC, hold it down, we'll turn that off, so that we get a little bit more slip out of the car, have effectively a sport mode to play with. So take it gently around the first run, but using the four-wheel drive, the front end will pull itself through. There we go, you can feel a little bit more of the back playing around. It's got a lot of grip, this thing. I'm concentrating a bit, but the back end is out here. We've got a degree of luck, and away we go. Okay, this is fairly ridiculous, sliding around in a Bentayga, but the most impressive thing is just how well it keeps itself in and drives. And here we've got a nice big corner to experiment with. Point the front end, kick the back out, and away we go. That's ridiculously fun. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Accelerate away. We're in manual now, just to hold the car a little bit better. So flick it around, let the back slide, hold the slide. It's so much fun, even if it's just a tiny amount of slip. Oh goodness me. So we're holding in second gear just to not be so throttle traction limited. Just let the back slide around. You can get around remarkably quickly given the conditions and what we're driving in. Needless to say, that was very entertaining. Just a couple of minutes to experiment with getting some sideways action going with the car. The circuit and course has become a little bit chopped up late in the day. It's rather warmer than expected here today. But let's just take a quick final glance around a different car. Obviously, the car that I've been driving right now, which has a different finish and colour scheme and trim, still with the red cross stitching and the gloss carbon fibre trim and inlays. But just in case you sort of haven't seen more of this in detail, let's just quickly scroll through some of the screens so you can see lots of different information, driving information. The assistance settings. This car has 12 ultrasonic sensors, 5 cameras, radars, long distance, short distance, everything. And basically it has a whole load of autonomous capability that's just not enabled yet. It's quite an interesting thing. It's loaded, for example, even then ice driving, you felt the seatbelt tensioners coming on every now and then if the car is getting too much yaw angle and it thinks it's going to go wrong. Obviously it doesn't know that we're trying to experiment and make that happen. Looking around the car then, or continuing around the car, you have lots of controls on the steering wheel. One thing, the wheel is very parts shared with other manufacturers. Obviously the Bentley logos and things aren't. I particularly like the finish of the clock, the air vent controls, just the fit and finish and feel of this car is what's so special about it. Things like the sound system that I obviously can't show you, but it's certainly been an interesting one to drive today. Let us just turn it off. The key is right here, quite a large item, the key for this car. But I've had an awful lot of fun. Let us step out here and see how much of a mess I made of this car, running on the winter tyres like I mentioned. But basically, I've enjoyed the Bentayga every time I've driven it. I think my one point or observation that I would talk about is that it is very expensive and liable to some big depreciation hits first year, as we've seen from the W12. But the V8, because what this is about is the engine, the V8 engine that's in this car, is remarkable. It's very much the same character, style, dynamic and feel as the W12, with plenty of power, plenty of go, masses of torque, vastly more than you could ever need, and it's £30,000 cheaper from new, so definitely a very interesting prospect. I think this is going to be more successful for Bentley than the W12 even. It was the plan from the outset, but it's here now, the V8 Bentayga. So big thanks to Bentley for the opportunity to come down today, drive the car, show it to you, explain more about it, talk about how it feels, and just have some fun out here on the snow and ice as well. So thank you very much, as always, for watching, guys. That's it for this time. I'll catch up with you again very soon. Cheers!